Keanu Reeves discovers his high school janitor still working at 80. His next move stuns everyone. Keanu Reeves had seen his fair share of success. From starring in iconic films like The Matrix and John Wick to being widely known as one of the most humble, down-to-earth actors in Hollywood, Keanu had it all. But despite his fame and fortune, he never lost his grounded nature. He continued to live his life in a way that made people appreciate him for who he was, not just the roles he played on screen. Keanu understood the value of kindness, humility, and human connection. One chilly autumn morning, Keanu found himself back in a place he had not visited in years, his old high school. The building had not changed much since he had walked its hallways as a teenager. The brick walls still stood tall, the windows remained the same, and the classrooms had the same air of quiet determination that Keanu remembered. It had been a while since he had last set foot there, but today was different. He was there to speak at an event that was being organized by the school for students looking for inspiration and guidance on how to pursue their dreams. Keanu was the perfect guest speaker, an actor who had made it big but never let fame change who he was at his core. As Keanu entered the building, he felt a rush of memories flood his mind. He could still remember the feeling of walking through those very same doors as a student, unsure of what the future held, filled with a sense of excitement mixed with anxiety. Now he was returning as a successful adult, someone who had achieved more than he had ever dreamed of. It was a humbling experience, and Keanu couldn't help but feel thankful for everything he had been able to accomplish in his life. The event was going to be held in the school's auditorium, but before heading there, Keanu decided to take a walk around the school, revisiting old spots that had meant something to him. He strolled down the familiar hallways, taking in the sights and sounds that had been a part of his teenage years. As he passed by the classrooms, he couldn't help but smile at how some things never changed. The same students huddled together, working on projects and chatting with one another, just as he had done back in the day. But as Keanu walked deeper into the school, he came across something that stopped him in his tracks. He was walking by the janitor's closet when he noticed an elderly man mopping the hallway floor. Keanu paused, his heart skipping a beat. The man looked so familiar, yet Keanu couldn't quite place him. He was older, of course, but there was something about his movements, his posture, that seemed to spark a memory in Keanu's mind. The man had a weathered face, but his eyes were kind and thoughtful. He wore a faded blue uniform, a bit worn from years of service, and his hands were calloused from the hard work he had done throughout his life. Then it hit him. The man was Mr. Jacobs, the school janitor who had worked here for as long as Keanu could remember. Mr. Jacobs had always been a quiet presence in the background, never seeking attention but always there, making sure everything was clean and well kept. Keanu's heart felt a strange mix of surprise and nostalgia. He had completely forgotten about Mr. Jacobs, but now, seeing the old janitor hard at work, all the memories came rushing back. Back when Keanu was a student at the school, he didn't think much about the janitor. Like most kids, he had probably passed by Mr. Jacobs hundreds of times, not giving him a second thought. But Keanu now remembered how Mr. Jacobs was always kind. He would often greet students with a smile, never complaining, always doing his job with pride. He had an air of quiet wisdom about him, and Keanu recalled that he always seemed to know the right thing to say when students were feeling down or stressed. Keanu remembered how, during his high school days, he was sometimes struggling with his own path, unsure of his future and how things would unfold. During those times, it was Mr. Jacobs who would offer a few words of encouragement, reminding Keanu that even the smallest steps mattered, that the hard work would eventually pay off. Now, decades later, here was Mr. Jacobs, still working at the same school, mopping floors as though the years had passed by without changing his routine. Keanu couldn't help but feel a deep sense of admiration for the elderly man. It was rare to see someone so dedicated to their work, someone who had given so much of their life to one place. Most people, by the time they reached their 80s, would have long since retired, spending their days in comfort, perhaps traveling or enjoying the fruits of their labor. But not Mr. Jacobs. He was still here, quietly working away, as though time had stood still for him. Keanu walked up to Mr. Jacobs, and the old man looked up, surprised to see him standing there. A slow smile spread across Mr. Jacobs' face as he recognized Keanu. "Well, well, look who it is," the janitor said, his voice warm with familiarity. "Keanu Reeves, all grown up." Keanu grinned, feeling a rush of warmth at the sight of the man who had once been a quiet yet steadfast part of his high school days. "Mr. Jacobs, I can't believe it's really you," Keanu said, his voice filled with genuine surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Still working hard, huh?" Mr. Jacobs chuckled, a twinkle in his eye. "Well, someone has to keep the place running," he said. "This school has been my home for more years than I can count. I'm just doing what I can to help out, keeps me busy." Keanu was taken aback. He hadn't expected Mr. Jacobs to still be working here. It felt almost unreal to think that someone who had been so integral to his school experience was still here, doing the same work, decades later. "I had no idea you were still here," Keanu said, his tone thoughtful. "How long has it been?" Mr. Jacobs shrugged slightly. "Oh, about 50 years, I suppose. A long time, but I don't mind. It's a job and it keeps me active." Keanu couldn't hide his admiration. "That's incredible," he said. "I don't know how you've kept at it for so long. But it's amazing. You've been a part of so many people's lives here." The two of them stood there for a moment, catching up, as the world around them seemed to fade away. For Keanu, it felt like a flashback to a simpler time in his life, a time when he was just a student with big dreams and a lot of questions. Mr. Jacobs had always been a constant during those uncertain years, even if his role had been behind the scenes. As they continued to talk, Keanu couldn't help but notice something. Mr. Jacobs had no family mentioned, no mention of retirement plans or hobbies outside of the school. It was clear that the school was his life, and Keanu began to realize that this man, who had given so much of his time and energy to the school, probably didn't have much to fall back on. He had devoted his entire existence to serving others, to making sure the school ran smoothly, but at what cost? Keanu's thoughts began to stir. He was struck by a sense of duty. Here was a man who had quietly supported him and countless others throughout their high school years, and now he was still here long after most people would have moved on. Keanu didn't know exactly what he could do, but he knew that this was something he couldn't ignore. He had to do something for Mr. Jacobs, to show his gratitude for everything the man had done for him and for the school. As Keanu continued to talk with Mr. Jacobs, he couldn't help but think back to his own high school days. The man in front of him, although older now, still had the same warmth in his eyes. Keanu remembered how, as a teenager, he had often passed by Mr. Jacobs, never really thinking about the quiet janitor who was always there, cleaning up after the messes and keeping the school running smoothly. But now, standing in front of him, Keanu realized how much he had taken Mr. Jacobs for granted. The janitor had always been there, offering small but kind words of encouragement when Keanu was feeling down or unsure. It was strange how someone who worked in the background could have such a profound impact on his life. Keanu was starting to feel a sense of responsibility now, a growing urge to do something meaningful for Mr. Jacobs. The more he thought about it, the more it bothered him that this man, who had worked tirelessly for decades, had never seemed to get the recognition he deserved. It was as though Mr. Jacobs had given so much of himself to the school and its students, and yet he had never asked for anything in return. As their conversation continued, Keanu casually asked, "So what's next for you, Mr. Jacobs? Have you thought about retiring?" "Enjoying some well-earned time off." Mr. Jacobs smiled faintly but shook his head. "Retirement? Well, I've thought about it, of course, but I don't have much else to do. I've always liked being here. It's familiar. And the kids, they're good people. I like being around them." Keanu noticed the slight sadness in Mr. Jacobs' voice, something that wasn't immediately obvious but was definitely there. The janitor had given so much of himself to this place, yet he didn't seem to have any close family or a social life outside the school. It was clear that, for Mr. Jacobs, the school had been his world. The idea of leaving it behind wasn't easy to imagine. "Do you have anyone to take care of you when you retire?" Keanu asked, his voice softer now as he tried to understand more about the man's life. "Mr. Jacobs paused for a moment, his face slightly tightening. He seemed to choose his words carefully, as though trying to avoid any uncomfortable truths. "No, not really. I never had children and my family is far away. I didn't really have anyone to look after me, and that's okay. I'm used to being on my own." Keanu felt a pang of empathy in his chest. He had no idea that Mr. Jacobs had been alone for so long. The thought of someone so kind, so dedicated to others, not having someone to lean on or care for him was heartbreaking. Keanu couldn't imagine how difficult that must have been for him. But there was something else that stood out to him. Mr. Jacobs didn't seem resentful or bitter about it. He just accepted it, as if it was the way things were supposed to be. Keanu didn't know how long they stood there, talking and reminiscing, but the more he listened, the more he realized that Mr. Jacobs had never asked for anything. Not for recognition, not for a better life, not for anything that would make his own circumstances easier. The janitor's life had been one of quiet service, and Keanu admired that. But he also realized that it wasn't right for someone like Mr. Jacobs, who had given so much, to be left with so little. "I can't believe you're still here," Keanu said, breaking the silence between them. "You've done so much for this school, it's hard to imagine it without you." Mr. Jacobs nodded thoughtfully. "Well, someone's got to do it, right? The job's never really done. There's always something else to clean, something else to fix, but I enjoy it. It gives me purpose." Keanu could hear the sincerity in his voice, but there was also something else, a sense of resignation, of quietly accepting a life that had become limited in its scope. Keanu wanted to change that. He knew that Mr. Jacobs deserved more than this. He deserved a chance to enjoy life, to experience the comfort that came with knowing he had given everything he had to offer and now deserved to rest and enjoy the fruits of his labor. "I think it's time for a change, Mr. Jacobs," Keanu said, his voice firm and determined. "You've been here for so long, and you've given everything to this school and these students. You deserve a break. You deserve to enjoy your life without worrying about cleaning floors every day." Mr. Jacobs looked at him with surprise, unsure of how to respond. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity and uncertainty. Keanu took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision. "I mean that I want to help you. You shouldn't have to keep working at your age. I'm going to do something for you, Mr. Jacobs. I don't want you to have to worry about working anymore. You've earned it." The elderly janitor stared at Keanu, clearly taken aback. "But I don't understand. I've just been doing my job. I never expected anything in return." Keanu smiled warmly. "That's exactly why I want to help. You've spent your whole life helping others, and now it's time for someone to help you. I'll make sure that you can retire comfortably. You won't have to worry about anything, and you'll have the opportunity to enjoy your later years without stress." For a moment, Mr. Jacobs was silent, his eyes filling with emotion. He seemed to be processing what Keanu had just said, unsure if it was even possible. But slowly, as the words sunk in, he started to tear up. "You don't have to do this for me, Keanu. I've lived my life. I'm just happy I could be here doing my job." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on Mr. Jacobs' shoulder. "I know you are. But you deserve more than just doing your job. I want to make sure you can live a life you enjoy. No more cleaning floors at your age. You've earned it." The janitor wiped his eyes and looked at Keanu with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. I don't know what to say. This is more than I could ever ask for." Keanu smiled again, his heart swelling with the knowledge that he was about to make a real difference in someone's life. "You don't have to say anything, Mr. Jacobs. Just know that you're appreciated. And I'll make sure you have everything you need." After the conversation with Mr. Jacobs, Keanu found himself reflecting on the decision he had just made. He had always been someone who valued kindness and the idea of giving back, but this was different. It wasn't just a small gesture or a donation, it was something much bigger. He was about to change someone's life completely, someone who had given so much without asking for anything in return. It felt right, but it was also a little daunting. Keanu had never taken on a responsibility like this before, but he knew it was something he had to do. In the following days, Keanu got to work. His team began looking into ways to help Mr. Jacobs retire comfortably. Keanu wanted to make sure that Mr. Jacobs could live out the rest of his life without having to worry about money, work, or being alone. He wanted to create a situation where Mr. Jacobs could finally enjoy the fruits of his decades of hard work. It wasn't just about the money, it was about giving him the peace of mind that he had earned. Keanu started by arranging a meeting with the school's administration. He knew it wouldn't be enough just to offer Mr. Jacobs a comfortable retirement. The school had to recognize his contributions as well. Keanu was determined to make sure that Mr. Jacobs didn't just fade into the background, as many people who had dedicated their lives to their jobs often did. He wanted the school to honor Mr. Jacobs in a way that would show how much his work had meant to everyone, from the students to the teachers, and everyone who had walked through the school's doors. At the meeting with the school principal, Keanu laid out his plans. Mr. Jacobs has been a part of this school for longer than anyone can remember, he began. He's done more for this place than most people realize. It's time for him to be recognized, and I want to help make that happen. The principal was moved by Keanu's words. I've always known Mr. Jacobs to be a kind, dedicated man, she said. But I never realized how much he had done for this school, for its students over the years. We owe him a lot. Keanu nodded. Exactly. And that's why I want to make sure he gets the recognition he deserves before he leaves. We need to give him something special, something that honors his years of service. After some discussion, they agreed on a plan. The school would hold a special ceremony in Mr. Jacobs' honor, where his contributions would be publicly acknowledged. The ceremony would be held in the auditorium, with all of the staff, students, and even some alumni invited to attend. The school would present Mr. Jacobs with a plaque to be displayed in the building as a permanent reminder of his dedication. Keanu wasn't done yet. He wanted to do more for Mr. Jacobs than just organize a ceremony. He reached out to a financial advisor to set up a trust fund for the elderly janitor. He wanted to make sure that Mr. Jacobs would have financial security for the rest of his life. The trust would ensure that he didn't have to worry about bills or living expenses. Keanu also arranged for Mr. Jacobs to receive health insurance benefits, making sure that he would be well taken care of in his older years. It wasn't just the financial security that mattered to Keanu, though. He knew that Mr. Jacobs didn't have any family nearby, and Keanu was determined to change that as well. He personally reached out to local organizations that helped provide companionship for elderly individuals. Keanu arranged for someone to check on Mr. Jacobs regularly, making sure he had someone to talk to and spend time with. He didn't want Mr. Jacobs to feel alone once he retired. A few days before the ceremony, Keanu met with Mr. Jacobs again. This time, the conversation was different. Instead of talking about the past, Keanu wanted to tell him what he had been planning. He could see that Mr. Jacobs was starting to get suspicious, noticing how much Keanu had been working behind the scenes. But Keanu didn't want to keep him in the dark any longer. Mr. Jacobs, Keanu began, his voice calm and sincere, I've been talking to the school and making some arrangements. I don't want you to worry about anything anymore. You've done enough. You've given so much to this school, and now it's time for you to enjoy the rest of your life. Mr. Jacobs looked at Keanu, confusion and disbelief in his eyes. What do you mean? I don't understand. What are you talking about? Keanu smiled softly, understanding the man's reluctance to accept help. I'm arranging for you to retire. You don't have to work here anymore. I've set up a trust for you so you'll have everything you need to live comfortably. You'll have financial security, and you won't have to worry about anything. Mr. Jacobs' eyes widened, and for a moment he didn't say anything. He seemed to be processing the information, trying to make sense of what Keanu was telling him. But why? I've just been doing my job. I never asked for anything. Keanu's expression softened. I know you didn't, but you deserve more than just a job. You deserve to live your life without worrying about work, without having to struggle. I want you to have peace of mind. Mr. Jacobs seemed to struggle with the idea of accepting such help, but Keanu's words had a quiet power that made it hard for him to refuse. He had always been a humble man, never expecting anything in return for his work. But Keanu wasn't asking him to refuse. He was offering him a chance at something better. You don't have to do this, Keanu, Mr. Jacobs said, his voice shaking slightly. I don't know how to accept something like this. I've never had anyone offer me something like this. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You don't have to say yes right away, but I want you to think about it. You've worked hard for so many years, and it's time for you to enjoy the life you've earned. I'm just giving you the opportunity to do that. Over the next few days, Keanu and Mr. Jacobs met several times, finalizing the details of the plan. Keanu wanted to make sure everything was in place before the ceremony, and Mr. Jacobs began to realize that Keanu wasn't just offering empty words. He was truly dedicated to helping him. On the day of the ceremony, the school auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and staff. Keanu had arranged for a video to be played, showcasing Mr. Jacobs' years of service, with heartfelt messages from students and staff who had worked with him over the years. There were tears in the audience as people realized just how much Mr. Jacobs had contributed to the school community. It was a moment of recognition that he had never expected. As the ceremony concluded, Keanu stood beside Mr. Jacobs, watching him as he received his plaque and the standing ovation from the crowd. Keanu felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had made a difference in someone's life, someone who had spent so many years giving, without ever asking for anything in return. The day of the ceremony arrived, and the air in the school auditorium was filled with excitement. Students and teachers gathered in their seats, and even some alumni had returned to the school for the special event. There was an energy in the room that was different from any other school event. This wasn't just a typical assembly or a graduation ceremony. This was a celebration of a man who had dedicated his entire life to the school and its students. Keanu stood at the front of the room, beside Mr. Jacobs, who was nervously adjusting his uniform. The elderly janitor had never been one to seek attention, and standing in front of a crowd made him feel uneasy. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not for something like this. But as Keanu looked at him, he could see the emotions in Mr. Jacobs' eyes. There was a mix of pride, disbelief, and a sense of humility that Keanu understood all too well. Keanu had spent the last few days making sure that everything was perfect for this moment. The ceremony was going to be a simple yet powerful tribute to Mr. Jacobs, and it was clear from the turnout that people deeply appreciated everything he had done. As the ceremony began, Keanu took the microphone and addressed the crowd. "Good afternoon, everyone," he started, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "We're here today to honor someone who has given more to this school than most of us could ever imagine. Mr. Jacobs has been a part of this school for over 5 decades, and in all that time, he's done everything from cleaning the floors to offering a kind word when students needed it most." Keanu paused and looked over at Mr. Jacobs, who was standing silently beside him, his hands clasped in front of him. He's never asked for recognition or praise. He's simply done his job day in and day out with an unwavering commitment. But today we want to change that. Today we want to thank Mr. Jacobs for everything he's done for this school and its students. The room fell silent as Keanu spoke, the audience hanging on his every word. The students, many of whom had passed by Mr. Jacobs every day without ever really thinking about him, were now beginning to understand the impact this quiet man had on their school. Keanu continued, speaking about the many ways Mr. Jacobs had touched their lives, even in the smallest of ways. He shared stories from his own time at the school, recalling how Mr. Jacobs had once given him advice when he was struggling with a difficult decision. Keanu's words brought tears to the eyes of many in the room, as they realized just how important Mr. Jacobs had been to the school community. Then it was time for the plaque to be presented. The principal walked up to the stage holding a beautifully crafted plaque that read, "In honor of Mr. Jacobs, a lifetime of service and dedication." She handed it to Mr. Jacobs, who took it with trembling hands. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen. He had never expected anything like this. He had always worked behind the scenes, never seeking praise, but today he was being celebrated in front of everyone. The students and staff gave him a standing ovation, clapping and cheering for the man who had quietly supported them all for so many years. Mr. Jacobs stood there, looking at the plaque in his hands, his face a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. The applause continued, and Keanu could see the tears welling up in Mr. Jacobs' eyes. This moment, this recognition, was something he had never thought would happen. It was overwhelming. As the applause died down, Keanu spoke again. "Mr. Jacobs, on behalf of the entire school, I want to thank you for your years of service, your kindness, and your unwavering dedication. You've made a difference in more lives than you could ever know. And now, it's time for you to take a well-deserved rest. It's time for you to enjoy the life you've earned." The crowd cheered again, and Mr. Jacobs, still holding the plaque, looked at Keanu, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what to say, Keanu. This is more than I could have ever imagined." Keanu smiled warmly at him. "You don't need to say anything, Mr. Jacobs. You've already said everything with your actions. Now it's my turn to do something for you." After the ceremony, there was a reception in the school's cafeteria where everyone gathered to share food and stories. Students and staff members lined up to speak with Mr. Jacobs, offering their thanks and sharing their personal memories of him. Many of the students who had once passed him by without a second thought now approached him with smiles and handshakes, expressing their appreciation for everything he had done. It was a heartwarming sight, one that Mr. Jacobs had never expected, but that he now fully deserved. Throughout the reception, Keanu stayed by Mr. Jacobs' side, making sure he was comfortable and enjoying the attention he was finally receiving. Keanu could see how much it meant to the elderly janitor. The recognition, the warm words from the students, and the gesture of the plaque. It was all a reminder that even the quietest, most humble people could leave a lasting impact on the world. As the afternoon wore on, Keanu spoke with some of the alumni who had returned for the ceremony. They shared their own stories of Mr. Jacobs, many of them recalling the ways in which he had helped them during their time at the school. It was clear that Mr. Jacobs had been a guiding force in the lives of so many people, even if his contributions had gone unnoticed by most. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Keanu and Mr. Jacobs found a quiet corner of the school courtyard. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the area, and for the first time in a long time, Mr. Jacobs seemed at peace. He sat on a bench, still holding the plaque, his eyes shining with emotion. "I never thought I'd be here," Mr. Jacobs said softly, his voice cracking. "I never thought I'd be honored like this. I've always just done my job, you know?" Keanu nodded. "I know, and that's exactly why you deserve this. You've done your job with more dedication and heart than anyone could ever expect. You've touched so many lives without even realizing it." Mr. Jacobs smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Keanu. I don't know how to repay you for all of this." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to repay me, Mr. Jacobs. You've already done more than enough. Now it's time for you to enjoy the rest of your life without worrying about anything." As they sat there in the quiet of the evening, Keanu couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. He had done something good for someone who had spent his entire life doing good for others. And for Mr. Jacobs, this was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where he could finally relax, enjoy his time, and know that he had made a difference in the world. The ceremony, the plaque, the reception, all of it had been a small token of appreciation for a man who had never asked for anything. But it was more than just a ceremony. It was a turning point in Mr. Jacobs' life. And for Keanu, it was a reminder of the power of kindness and the importance of giving back to those who selflessly give to others. As they both sat in silence, watching the sunset, Keanu knew that he had done the right thing. He had helped someone who had quietly shaped his own life, and in doing so, he had learned the true meaning of generosity. After the ceremony, everything seemed to change for Mr. Jacobs. For so long, he had lived a quiet, unnoticed life, doing his work without ever seeking acknowledgement. But now, standing in front of a crowd that had applauded his dedication, something had shifted inside him. The recognition, the warmth, the heartfelt gratitude, it was all more than he could have ever imagined. But despite all the praise and admiration, Keanu could tell that Mr. Jacobs was still adjusting to his newfound sense of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in his life. In the weeks that followed, life for Mr. Jacobs began to change. Keanu made sure that everything was taken care of for him. The trust fund was set up, the healthcare benefits were arranged, and a small apartment near the school was secured for him so he wouldn't have to worry about his living situation. For the first time in a long while, Mr. Jacobs didn't have to wake up early to clean the floors of the school or deal with the weariness of a job he had grown to love, but that had taken a toll on his body. At first, Mr. Jacobs found it difficult to adjust to the idea of not having to work. He would sometimes wake up early, only to realize that there was no need to rush to the school. He would walk around his small apartment, unsure of what to do with himself. It wasn't that he didn't enjoy the time off, he just didn't know how to fill his days when he wasn't working. For so many years, work had been his purpose, his routine, and now, without it, he felt lost. Keanu noticed this change when he visited Mr. Jacobs a few weeks after the ceremony. They sat together in the cozy living room of the small apartment, and Keanu could see that Mr. Jacobs was still getting used to the quietness of retirement. "How are you feeling?" Keanu asked, his voice gentle. "Are you settling in okay?" Mr. Jacobs sighed and looked out the window. "It's strange, Keanu. I don't know what to do with myself now. I've spent my whole life working, and now that I don't have to, it feels like I'm not needed anymore. It's hard to adjust." Keanu smiled sympathetically. "I understand. But you've worked so hard for so many years. You deserve this time for yourself. You've earned it." Mr. Jacobs looked at Keanu, his eyes filled with a mix of uncertainty and gratitude. I just don't know where to start. I've always worked, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I'm not working. Keanu thought for a moment, then came up with an idea. Why don't we start small? There's a whole world out there, Mr. Jacobs, and it's waiting for you to explore it. You don't have to figure it all out at once, but I'd like to help you find something that brings you joy outside of work. Mr. Jacobs looked at him, intrigued. What do you mean? Well, Keanu said, maybe there's something you've always wanted to do but never had the time for. A hobby, something you've always dreamed of trying. Whether it's gardening, reading, painting, or something else, there's no pressure. You can take your time and find something that makes you happy. Mr. Jacobs smiled slowly, his eyes lighting up a little. I've always wanted to learn how to garden. I've never had the space for it, but I've always loved the idea of growing my own plants. Keanu's face lit up with a grin. That's a great idea. How about I help you get started? We can pick up some gardening supplies and find a spot for you to start your garden. Over the next few weeks, Keanu and Mr. Jacobs spent time together exploring the world of gardening. They visited a local nursery, picking out plants and flowers that Mr. Jacobs could tend to. Keanu even helped him design a small garden in the backyard of his apartment, where Mr. Jacobs could plant his new greenery. It wasn't a huge space, but it was perfect for someone who was just starting out. As Mr. Jacobs began to care for his plants, he found that the simple act of nurturing something, whether it was a flower, a vegetable, or a tree, brought him a sense of peace. He would spend hours in the garden, tending to the soil, watering the plants, and watching them grow. It became a source of joy for him, something he could pour his energy into without feeling like he was missing out on work. Slowly but surely, the quiet solitude of retirement began to feel less strange, and Mr. Jacobs started to find a new rhythm in his life. One afternoon, as Keanu visited Mr. Jacobs, he saw the old man sitting on the porch, his hands covered in soil, a smile on his face as he admired his garden. It was a peaceful sight, and Keanu couldn't help but feel proud of the progress Mr. Jacobs had made. How's the garden coming along? Keanu asked as he walked up to the porch. Mr. Jacobs looked up and grinned. It's growing beautifully, Keanu. I didn't expect it to be so rewarding. There's something about watching these plants grow that makes me feel. I don't know, like I'm doing something important again. Keanu sat down next to him, taking in the vibrant garden around them. I'm really glad to see you enjoying it. You deserve to have something that brings you joy. Mr. Jacobs nodded, his face content. I've spent my whole life working hard for others, Keanu, but now I'm learning to take care of myself. It feels good. It feels right. As the weeks turned into months, Mr. Jacobs became more comfortable in his new routine. Gardening became not just a hobby, but a source of peace and purpose. He also began to reconnect with some old friends he hadn't seen in years. Keanu encouraged him to reach out to people he had lost touch with, and soon, Mr. Jacobs was meeting up with former colleagues and even classmates from his high school days. It was a refreshing change for him, reconnecting with people he had known from different parts of his life, and rediscovering the joy of companionship. Meanwhile, Keanu continued to check in on him regularly, making sure he had everything he needed. He was pleased to see how much Mr. Jacobs had started to enjoy life again. But he also noticed something else. Mr. Jacobs wasn't just living for himself anymore. He was also starting to give back in his own way. He began volunteering at local community centers, helping others learn how to garden or simply offering his time to assist in other projects. It was clear that Mr. Jacobs still had a lot to offer, and now he was doing it on his own terms. One afternoon, as Keanu visited Mr. Jacobs to check on his garden, the old man turned to him with a thoughtful look. Keanu, he said, I've been thinking. I want to do something for the school. I may not be able to work there anymore, but I can still help in some way. Keanu was surprised but touched by his words. What do you have in mind? Well, Mr. Jacobs said with a smile, maybe I can teach some of the students how to garden. I know they're always busy with schoolwork, but I could show them how to grow their own food, teach them a little about nature. Keanu smiled, feeling proud of Mr. Jacobs. That's a great idea. I think the students would love it. And so, Mr. Jacobs began a new chapter in his life, teaching students the joys of gardening and passing on his knowledge to the next generation. It wasn't just about growing plants. It was about giving them something that could last for years to come, skills, wisdom, and a sense of purpose. Keanu often visited, proud of how far Mr. Jacobs had come. He had helped someone who had dedicated his entire life to serving others, and in return, Mr. Jacobs had found his own way to continue giving back on his own terms. As the years passed, Mr. Jacobs' life was filled with new experiences, new friendships, and a sense of peace that had once seemed out of reach. Keanu knew that helping Mr. Jacobs had been one of the most fulfilling things he had ever done. It wasn't just about the financial security or the ceremony. It was about giving a man the chance to live a full, happy life, to enjoy the fruits of his labor, and to continue making a difference in the world in his own quiet, humble way. And for Keanu, that was enough. Knowing that Mr. Jacobs was finally getting the rest and recognition he deserved was a reward that could never be measured in dollars or applause. It was the quiet satisfaction of knowing that he had helped a man who had spent his life helping others.